did they already have houses and places for them to stay? I mean, that's a pretty good question. I'm gonna answer this one two ways. Did they have housing and places for not only the slaves but the slave owners? How was they able to build so many houses to house all the plantation owners? I mean, let's think about it. Where did they get all the wood to build all them houses? Again, how did they create all them shackles? So it's almost redundant at this point, because it's like, the more you start looking into this whole situation without your feelings attached, you will see clearer that these people have messed with your history a lot. And it almost to the point where I can kind of see why we're like stagnant, because people are using this and they regurgitate this over and over and over again. And what it does is it stagnates the generation to come. And then they're eventually gonna grow up doing the same thing. It's a rinse and repeat mechanism that they have put upon us. So yes, I think that is a good question. Where in the U.S., what we consider the United States of America, where did they start cutting to build all these homes? How did they house all those Africans? And then you gotta remember, how many people you think can survive on a plantation? Now, if we're talking about even in the early 1800s, let's say 1801, they claim that, hypothetically, they claim that Dred has one of the biggest plantations in America in 1801. I have 1,000 slaves and servants. Now, my question is simple. How on earth would I be able to feed 1,000 people 1 meal a day? Where would I get all the cattle? Hell, where would I get all the slop? Because every plantation that we've seen, you see a regular house that they show us, and you can see a nice piece of land, and I guess that's where all the slaves lived at, but you never see none of the buildings that houses that the slaves lived in. You don't never see those. You only see an old looking house. That's it. Well, if that slave master or plantation owner lived in that house, how was he feeding everybody? How? It's impossible. Even if he had a plantation of 500 people, but let's go a little deeper and I'll wrap this segment up. If I had a plantation with 1,000 Africans on it, right? How would I be able to communicate with 1,000 people that speak a different language? How would they know exactly what I'm saying to them, what to do, how to do it? How? How would they ever know what I am literally saying to them? They wouldn't know. We wouldn't know how to communicate with one another. But see, this is another thing too I want to add. If I flip the tables, or turn the tables, right, and I'm one of the slaves that got captured and brought over, and it's 999 others, and we speak African or Arabic, and the slave masters speak English, what's going to stop us from still speaking Arabic or African amongst each other while the slave master's not around? That will make, if they beat the English language into us, that would make us bilingual. You can't beat a language out of anybody. If you was to try to do that with the Chinese or Hispanic, they will become bilingual. You don't just graduate, you just don't naturally just lose your native tongue. So now they will be able to speak English and African because they can still communicate amongst each other. They're with each other 24 hours a day. So now when they're having babies and their kids will naturally become bilingual, because we know that a child can speak multiple languages, especially at a young age, because their brain is like a sponge. So if they hear us speaking English and African, they'll pick up both languages just like that. Ask anybody that lives even in this country right now today how hard was it for them to learn English and whatever their native tongue growing up in America. It wouldn't be that hard. So again, nope, it's not possible. where were all the bathrooms on the ships? That's actually simple, but a good question. See, history would tell you that they was peeing and, doing number two on themselves. Again, we already know if that was the case, that means the ship would have been full of poop, pee, all over the place. First of all, it would have been unbearable for white people. They wouldn't want that on their ship. The Europeans would have been like, we have to do something about it. That's with anybody, right? But we do know that feces, inhaling feces and urine stuff, you can actually contract hepatitis. They all would have been affected by the time they got to America. And not only they would have got affected, but they also, again, they would have affected everybody on the ship. So this notion that they was doing that, to me personally, was a way for them to try to cover up where they know they messed up at. So they knew they couldn't tell us that there was toilets and stuff like that on the ship, because now you have to ask yourself, and so they had toilets in the 1600s. In the same history, they told us that the Europeans didn't even have a toilet. They didn't even have a mechanism that we call toilet, even in Europe. So now we have to ask ourselves, well, wait a minute. If they really was allowing this to happen on those ships, how many slaves did they bring to America alive? I think that should be the question. So again, man, there's no way that they was doing that, and the answer is no. No, it wasn't no toilets on the ship because it wasn't no ships. How would slaves who never seen American architecture or roads come out of a jungle and build buildings, roads, and structures that they never seen before? This is easy. They wouldn't be able to do that. They didn't just magically know how to build these things. But history will tell you apparently they did. Let alone, I'm gonna ask a question. I wouldn't be questioning everything, that not have my own questions. How come that the buildings and infrastructure that was built in America is not exactly the same infrastructure and structures that we see in Europe, when they claim that those are the people that came from Europe? We have to think about this. If these people came from a place, and you can see the infrastructure and the way they build over there in the UK all the way up to this day, and even what they claim to be some of the oldest buildings, how come our buildings, some of our oldest buildings that date around the same time stamp, are completely different structures? That makes no sense. I'm gonna bring my knowledge with me. It's not like I'm gonna go from one place with knowledge. Just because I moved from Miami to California, I forgot everything that I learned in Miami when I get to California. That makes no sense. So if I know how to build a house, and I build a house in a particular fashion, in Georgia, if I move to Arizona, my knowledge come with me. I'm gonna still build my structures and my infrastructure the same way. So I think that's a pretty good question, because now we're looking at if they even told the truth about Europeans coming over here from Europe or the UK. I'm not buying that either. I'm not buying that. I think that the answer again is no. That's not logical. Because even the way they talk, think about it. The people that talk in the UK, you saying that they native tongue just disappeared when they got here. Well, who beat their native tongue out of them? See, this is what I be talking about. Who beat the native tongue out of the British that came over here? Our Southerners talk like this, way over yonder and all that. You know how Europeans, if that's what we want to call them, how Europeans talk here. Why they don't sound like the Europeans in the UK? What changed? You gonna tell me people naturally just start talking differently? Because last time I checked, again, they wasn't enslaved. Again, based on their history, mainstream history, they wasn't enslaved. Nobody beat it out of them. So now we have to look at A and B. You have two groups of people, alleged groups of people that live in America, and both groups apparently changed their native tongues together. I'm gonna let y'all think about that. Yeah, I'm gonna let y'all ponder. How did they read blueprints if they did not read, write, or speak English? They wouldn't be able to. It's just a simple answer. They would not be able to do that. And not only do they teach us in history, I think at one point in time it was actually illegal for Africans or Negroes to even learn how to read. So how would they be able to read a blueprint? Yeah, that's a simple. They wouldn't have. That's why, again, they lied. It's a lie. They made it up. All these questions are pretty good questions, and none of these people will be able to give you undeniable answers to these questions because they knew that they made it up from the get-go. They needed something to fulfill their agenda, and I'm surprised that they even got away with this stuff for this long, because you have to think about it. These are some evil geniuses. I would ask the question, how would they know something so illogical would work in their favor? So, it just goes to show you that a lot of people was brainwashed as children. And what we're witnessing right now is all the children that was brainwashed are adults right now today. So now we're dealing with those same kids as brainwashed adults. And that's why they're trying to do it to our children. So when they grow up, they will also be adults, but brainwashed, and it's a trickle-down effect. And then they're gonna brainwash their kids, and they're gonna brainwash their kids. That's what keeping this whole mechanism work. But to sum it all up, they wouldn't be able to, period. People say they stole our language. What was the language that they spoke then? How would they be able to stop millions of people from speaking their own language if they don't speak English? They say if the native Indians still speak their language, why were their language not stolen? You can stop someone from speaking a language? How would they communicate then? People in Haiti speak French and English bilingual, I told y'all. People in Brazil speak Spanish, English, and other languages. Why do American blacks only speak English? Because they have always been here. They always spoke English. Also, blacks in Africa also speak hundreds of languages. Why didn't they steal their language? I talk about this a lot. And honestly, I came up with my own conclusion, which I believe is a lot more logical than what a lot of people try to put out there. I think that natives of this country, what we call America, already spoke English. And the Europeans that came to this country also spoke English. That's obvious. I also know for a fact that we was already diverse when the British Crown came to the U.S. We have documentation to prove that as well. Because when they came here, it wasn't just native black people, quote unquote. They came here to a diverse country where there was dark-skinned people, light-skinned people, you want to call it in between, or brown-skinned people. It was very diverse. And they eventually ended up enslaving everybody that was here. But everybody was able to communicate with one another. And again, if you go back to what I was saying in the earlier part of this series, I talked about how you cannot beat a language out of somebody. All you can do is make them become, not make them, but they will naturally become bilingual. And you can see that with evidence around the world. These cultures are bilingual. They speak their native tongue and then some. Over here, we do not. Even the Europeans over here do not speak British or European and then something else. They only speak the same language that we speak. The same language. And I think that this part of the world was dominated by English-speaking people. It's just simple as that. And the other part of the world, they was dominated by whatever languages that they speak. It's just been that way. I think it's a natural process, and I think that they just use even language to divide the people. Oh, you speak a different language? Kill them. You speak a different language? Enslave them. You speak a different language? Ew, look at him. I think that that's just another divide and conquer mechanism, but they can't prove it. They would never be able to prove how one's language has disappeared or something like that. But yeah, again, no. I enjoyed that one. That was a really good, that last one was a really good question. What's up, family? This is my Q&A series. Make sure y'all leave y'all questions below these videos, and I promise I'll make a video answering them for you.